The story of Gung Loy Jim, or Loy Jim as we all know him, had its start in 1868 when his grandfather, Jim Young Fat, emigrated from China to California. Loy's grandfather initially worked construction on the California Pacific Railway. In 1910, his son, Cam Key Jim, Loy's father, moved to Burnaby, British Columbia, Canada, and Jim Young Fat joined him and set up a sawmill business. Jim Fat and Cam Key Jim moved to Lillooet, British Columbia in 1911, where they built a general store on Main Street. They were also involved in a commercial tomato growing operation in Kamloops. In 1919, the Jims moved to Little Fort, British Columbia in the North Thompson River Valley and purchased a hotel that burned down only 1 year later. In its place, Jim Manley's store was built. A 10-acre garden and dairy were also started to supply the store. In 1920, Loy Jim was born in the back of the new general store. Loy grew up in a very loving family with an early exposure to agriculture. His sisters Marina and Silver were always very close at hand. As a youngster, Loy loved sports. His sister Silver's yearbook is filled full of pages of Loy's accomplishments at local track meets in the North Thompson Valley over the years. Loy continued his love of sport and adventure throughout his life. As a youngster, he took up cross-country skiing. At one point, he even tried to learn how to ski jump from Ole Janssen, who was a longtime resident of Little Fort. Loy built his own ski jump and as well his own skis. As can be seen in these pictures, I don't think he was quite as good a ski jumper as he was a cross-country skier. Later in life, Loy went on to enjoy hunting. He also became a member of the Maple Leaf Gun Club and was an accomplished marksman. After completion of a grade 8 education in Little Fort, Loy went on to business school in Kamloops. He then returned to Little Fort. He was still a teenager and continued to work in the family store alongside his sisters Marina and Silver. Loy started his first business venture at the age of 18. It was a commercial fishing camp at Towwheel Lake in British Columbia. Towwheel Lake is located 18 miles as the crow flies from Little Fort. He is heard in this clip describing how the lake was stocked.
It was stocked by Huey Liddell.
The first time?
Yep, first time and the last time. Huey Liddell stocked it. He used our horse called Old Maud. They took the eggs up in a 5-pound lard bucket.
In the late 1930s, a main lodge was built and other smaller cabins followed. There was no ground transport. All that was packed in was brought in by horse. Like most businesses, things didn't really take off until after the war. This footage is seen in the late 1940s when guests arriving from across Canada and in particular the United States would come and visit Little Fort by train. Guests would disembark and then make the journey across the river on the reaction ferry that still exists today. After making the way across the river via the ferry, guests would go up Ferry Hill and then stop at the store, and from there repack. From the store, the adventure had just begun. Guests would repack their goods and then begin the 10-mile journey to Loy Jim's horse farm. After the requisite visit at the store with Loy's parents, the journey to Towwheel Lake began by vehicle. The first 10 miles were done in this way. Upon arrival at the horse ranch, goods and provisions were once again repacked and loaded on horses. The trip to Towwheel Lake began in earnest. And it was a hard trail. The route to Towwheel Lake was a good 9 to 10 miles. The trail was rough in places, and the stories are plentiful from this time.
Oh, I had about 30 horses at the peak time.
Did you pack them
Always
all at
one or
once?
two herd.
But you didn't pack them all at once?
No, in the springtime we packed 27 head.
The pack horse days were an adventurous time. Here's Loy seen not very glamorously loading a horse. And then here he is seen on his favorite horse. As one can imagine, with pack horses, things didn't always go as planned.
12 horses tied head to tail, and one slipped and took everybody else down. Down that canyon.
What a wreck.
What a wreck, you said it. And the groaning, I can never shall forget it. 12 horses all groaning and rolling.
In this clip, Loy is heard telling the story of how LL Bean, the owner of the LL Bean clothing company, injured himself while traveling to Towwheel.
He said, I heard the horse kick him because he was switching the horse ahead of him and everybody was fooling around. Anyhow, he got kicked and I heard it go whack. And after it went whack, I went back and I says, he says, it's broken, Loy, it's broken. So I grabbed the foot. It was kind of cockeyed and I just went like that and it just flopped right around. Both bones were broken. And with that, he fainted and fell off the horse. And then I got him on the ground, and I said to the guys, I got to make a stretcher. We got to pack him from here. So all the guys come off their horses and come back, and some forgot to tie their horses because they're excited. They went down the trail by themselves, and oh, what a mess. Anyhow, I put him in a stretcher. We made a stretcher out of coats. The sleeve, poles up the sleeves, and buttoned the coats up, but the buttons weren't strong enough for this big guy, and he fell through the stretcher. Oh, I put a splint on. No, before I put the splint on, he fell through the stretcher. Then I had to fix the stretcher up differently. And I built a stretcher, just jackknife to cut poles with and so on. That was all right. Then he said, Loy, he says, you got to put a traction on. He said, the bones are rubbing together and it's killing me. So I said, okay. So I got a crotch stick, and I put it in his crotch. And I cut the stick off the right length, and I pulled the foot and tied it to the bottom of the stick, eh? And I bound the crotch to his leg, and it was right in his crotch. We went for about a mile, and he hollered, and he says, my testicles are rubbed raw. And instead of putting it on the outside of the hip and putting the soft cloth around his groin, I do it quick, put the stick right up against his, in between his legs. And he roared and hollered about that, so then I changed the stick on the outside. When I got him to Kamloops, Jesus, it was way 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that. No, it was daylight, it was 4 o'clock. Drove him to town after here. So that was all right. Then, when he came back the next year, he brought me a first aid book.
After a long ride, the guests would arrive and the fishing would begin. In the early days, the fish were plentiful. 10-pounders and bigger were commonplace, and fish under 5 pounds were thrown back. This video footage is actually seen in the 1950s of large fish still being caught.
Yeah.
Loy claims he caught the largest fish, 22 pounds,
And it was out of water for 4 days. And it was cleaned.
on 44-foot line.
40 foot with a hank.
The story of Towwheel Lake touched many lives. Pack horses eventually gave way to motorized vehicles, and the operation flourished in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s and was eventually sold in 1975. Like many businesses, family and friends played a key role. Loy's sisters Silver and Marina worked in the business from the very beginning to the very end. Many others helped out over the years, and the pictures from this alone could fill many albums. The influence that Cass Eustache had on the family over the many years could not go unnoticed. At the same time as working long hours at Towwheel Lake, Loy continued to help out along with the family in the operations of the family store. Loy is heard in these clips describing some of the family's farming operations in the 1940s.
Yeah, and you came back, yeah.
And Dad rented his farm, which is real important.
Loy is heard in this clip describing the dairy of the early days. He also describes where the old barn sat relative to the store as it exists today, and as well why the new barn was built.
Yeah, well, we used to have a dairy, eh? We had 12 cows at one time. And that was during Depression. We had 12 Jersey cows. Yeah, and right here in this house, the shit is right under Maria. There's a streak of shit in the dirt there.
Oh, really?
Common.
That's
where this old barn sat, remember?
Yeah.
And they pitched the manure over the
Yeah,
hill.
I had a picture of that. So we had 12 Jersey cows and shipped cream.
Yep,
In
in the
milk.
30s.
2 canoes.
Yep. That's how come that barn got built. There was no wheat and shit anymore, and no cows. Packed the bloody milk clean back to the store.
Yeah.
And 2 sticks to separate.
Mm-hmm.
We had a separator. It wasn't a big one. He sat on it.
In this last clip, Loy is heard describing how he came to acquire the farm. In 1943, what is now known as Little Fort Herefords came into existence when Loy purchased his first 3 head of Hereford.
And then they bought it.
I bought it from Lidl with the money I made from the fishing camp.
After registering his first Herefords in 1943, Loy Jim maintained a herd of 25 cows. He initially registered cattle with the prefix Lucky Jim. The prefix was chosen as an indication of the importance of luck in Chinese culture. In the 1970s, the prefix was changed to LFH, Little Fort Herefords, and Loy renamed the ranch. Loy's strong suit was not paperwork. Surprisingly, we were able to find a number of old documents showing registration of cattle, as well as bills of sale and as well bills of purchase. Shown in this document is the registration of the 10V cow. This cow is one of the foundation cows of the herd. The 1950s were a busy time for Gung Loy Jim. He became what he describes as the luckiest man alive when he met and married Marie Palashati in 1956. He started his family in 1958 with the birth of Cam. This was followed shortly after in 1970 with the birth of Key, and then Kim in 1968 and Keen in 1970. Loy's business interests really took off in the 1960s. Along with his wife Marie, a new lodge was built at Towwheel Lake. As well, a new general store was built in Little Fort at the same site of the general store today. He as well continued to pursue his interest in mining, becoming one of the founding shareholders of Pine Point Mines in Northwest Territories. He also did some logging and was one of the prime contractors for the construction of Old Highway 24. In the early 1970s, Loy really began to pursue his cattle interests. He began exhibiting cattle at the provincial bull sale at the old Kamloops stockyards, and in 1973 was fortunate to win a reserve grand champion. This was the first championship bull ever to be shown in the province of British Columbia that was AI bred. Longtime Hereford breeder Don Needabaugh is seen leading this bull. In the mid-1980s, the herd was expanded to its current size of around 100 head. Loy as well began to aggressively pursue artificial insemination and embryo transplant in order to improve the cow herd. His efforts paid off, and in 1993 he won reserve champion at a show that he was also presented with his 50-year pin. Loy considered receiving his 50-year pin one of the greatest accomplishments of his life. Sadly, in the year prior to receiving his pin, Loy's health began to fail due to complications from diabetes. Just 3 months after this picture was taken, Loy passed away on September the 17th of 1995. The life of Gung Loy Jim was full of achievement, accomplishment, and adventure. Above all, he was a family man and a friend to all.
I ain't lived forever, but I've lived enough. And I've learned to be gentle, and I've learned to be tough. I found only two things that last till the end. One is your heroes, the other's your friend.